Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 2, Chapter 23, Episode 1. I don't know why it's going Chapter 23, Episode. That feels like we're... this naming convention might be a little bit tricky for me, you guys. However, fine, sure, let's go with it. I am really surprised by this premiere. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Natalia for commissioning this episode. Natalia, if you're out there, what's up, girl? First of all, y'all, I'm so excited to be starting this next season so quickly. I don't know what I was looking at, but when I checked when the next episode was, it looked like there was going to be a big break, and apparently I was wrong about that. So, super glad to be wrong. And secondly, I'm so thankful. Let me explain. I think I mentioned, because of the way the finale ended last time, how irritated I was with the plot line of Sons of Anarchy where his child gets abducted, and how like half the season was devoted to tracking down his baby and getting the baby back. And I can't tell you guys how relieved I was that we get the baby back this episode. We don't have to spend a whole half a season wondering if the baby's okay, panicking, dealing with one thing and another. I truly, guys, I don't know what I would have done, because this show is very good at sort of undermining my expectations while still following kind of rote tropes, which is really, really tricky to do. And so I think if she hadn't gotten the baby this episode, I would have trusted still that we were doing something worthwhile. But the relief I felt when it's not going to be dragged out, they're not going to milk this for everything. They solely used it for a really intense cliffhanger on the first season, and it's basically resolved, but there are still lingering, lasting effects of paranoia on Jane, which I appreciate because, yeah. And this is a pretty tough one. Jane is dealing with being a new mother on top of the horrific violation of getting her child taken. And I really, this was one of those episodes where Jane is doing something that she admits herself doesn't make sense. And I want to understand so badly, but I feel like she's being so unfair to herself. And most of the time, I get where Jane's coming from and why she has the standards she does. But because she went through something that I have no frame of reference for, the heightened feelings she's got going on are something I'm having trouble really grasping, I think. So anyway, let's get started. So we begin with first of all, the recap of the entire series, but then we get Jane's, the flashback that we always get, where she's little and her grandmother is saying, this is the best part about telenovelas. Don't be scared. You know that they will live happily ever after. And it says Jane is 11 years old, and there was a really scary cliffhanger at the end of last season. And I love the way that they're doing this. It says so right at the beginning in the theme song. And then we see, I love these fake soap operas, you guys. Los Milagros de Mariana. And she's dancing with castanets. And one of her castanets has like a dagger in it, like a switchblade. So she's dancing with this guy and she's got the switchblade and she just stabs him. And somehow in the midst of all of this, after stabbing him and like holding the knife in her hand the way she does, nobody sees it and she's able to run away in the confusion. We see her run to a cliff and leap off into a lagoon, and then she climbs up onto the sand, and we see a very Rogelio-esque man with a cummerbund turn around and look at her longingly as she stands with her dress sodden, and his relief, and them hugging and kissing, and to get her true love back, she would do anything, you know, like, it's, this is... This is what Jane is thinking about allegedly in this episode. Now, this is probably one of the more tenuous of the links that they have managed to make. It links clearly to the audience. Making this memory link to Jane, very, very thin, but it's fine. So it says, this is the song that she would be thinking of when she would get the worst news ever, but that hasn't happened yet. You see, we're only 9 minutes after Mateo was taken. And we've got her and Raphael still trusting that Mateo is about to be brought back by the nurse, looking through all of their photos as they decide which ones they're going to post to social media to introduce the baby to everybody. And I really like that she's thinking, oh, the baby's going to be known for his hair. So we don't want one where he's got his hat on. I want everybody to be able to see his hair. That's exactly the kind of branding you want. Meanwhile, we've got Shamara and Rogelio sitting on like the little couch off to the side and acting real weird because they still have not told anybody that they got married. So it's all very awkward and tense. So this is when a nurse comes in and says, hi, I'm here to take Mateo for his hearing test. And she says, oh, another nurse took him. Really? Who? Helen, her name was? There's no nurse in maternity named Helen. And you see realization slowly fall over Jane. And then we go to a bar where Michael is getting another drink, and he's sitting next to a character actor that I know from like a million things, but I can't think of a single one right now, who asks if he's okay, having a rough night. And the dude says, yeah, well, you know, I got passed over for a promotion, so pretty tough day. And Michael explains that his ex-fiance got artificially inseminated by accident with the sperm of a man that she had a crush on. And so they just had their baby tonight. And there's this long pause and he just goes, you win. But eventually he gets a phone call and it is Sinrostro. And we see from the back, Rose standing at a window and she has short hair. It's later on, I think we are seeing her again, or maybe it's another person, but I think it's still her. And she has long hair. So these are all wigs, because the short hair 100% is a wig. Like you can just tell right off the bat. The long hair later, I'm pretty certain is also a wig. And none of these we like never ever get to see her face, which is sort of interesting because I am sort of under this impression at this point she didn't get her face changed. That's what I'm going with. Is that actually we've all been tricked into thinking we're looking for somebody else and it's not somebody else. It's the same face. I really don't know how that would work, but let's go with that. So then we go back to the hospital. Now that it's out, what's going on? They don't know Sinrostro took the baby. All they know is that the nurse walked out of the building with the baby and they have her on film leaving, which it's really something that this woman was like full face on the security footage. This woman will be super recognizable. Like will they ever run into her again? Will they ever know who? That's what I'm sort of waiting for, because I don't think Jane forgets this woman's face ever in her life. So they either have to, if this woman is going to continue to be involved, make sure Jane doesn't get a look at her, or they don't take into account how much Jane will remember. I don't know, but I feel like this lady's going to play a role on something later. So Jane is starting to like understand, truly get it, that her baby has been taken out of the building. And I love her doing these deep breaths as she's hearing this and letting them go through all of the information. This is precisely how I cope with this sort of thing, is like, I feel the panic building, but I don't want to interrupt, because I want all of the info that they have available for us to work with first before I begin to panic. And so she's doing these like slow, deep breaths, like she's in labor almost, trying to keep herself under control as the situation is like proving to be worse and worse with every passing moment. She gets a call and she's telling Michael someone took Mateo, and he says, I need you to listen to me. I need you to clear out the room. I know who has Mateo, and I know how to get him back. And 43 minutes after Mateo was taken, he is in the room with them explaining what happened. And I thought Rose was going to him in his capacity as a cop, which, like, she is because of his access to evidence, but it's not the same. It's not what I was thinking it was going to be. So she says, I had a dragonfly brooch. Luisa took it when we last saw each other. It's very valuable. And apparently it was logged into evidence at your police station. Get it out, and I'll give you Mateo. And when Raphael is like, do the police do that? Michael's like, oh, it's not going to be official. I'm just doing this. And Raphael and Jane are like, dude, are you sure? And Michael's like, yeah, this is literally the only way I see us getting your kid back. And that is the only thing I care about right now. So we're transitioning into a new era here. I am really on board. We've got now Raphael and Michael both in Jane's life being good dudes. Here's an approach you don't see all that often. Like, you know, last season, there was just so much reason to dislike each of them. There were so many things that they each did, and I'm sure this season they'll pull some shit. Like, don't get me wrong. But having them both trying to get along, being reasonable with each other, and respectful and grateful, and like they are aware of their rivalry, and they each, you know, have some resentments around that, but they're trying so hard not to put Jane in the middle of their drama. I live for it. This is exactly what I want. I don't know how this continues, because you have to create drama somewhere. But as of this episode, I want the trend of the two of them just attempting to be adults to continue, please. And we will get further into that. But Raphael says, I'm coming with you. And Jane says, me too. And they're both like, are you fucking high? You just gave birth. And she's like, I am definitely coming with you. I am his mother. I'm not going to just sit here and wait, which, like, a part of me just wanted to be like, girl, no. But another part of me had to admit, a situation this dire, I don't think there's any possible way you can leave me in that room alone. Like, I would lose my mind. I would have to be doing something. So I love, she's like, can I have those adult diapers, please? And then, all right, let's go. And she hobbles out of there. You can see her family outside just being like, girl, what are you doing? So that is like, I won't say that's the cold open exactly, but because there's not real like credits to speak of on this show. not like an opening song. They really use the previously on kind of as, you know what I'm talking about? So it, right after that, it just says chapter 23 on the screen. And then we move into the next scene. And, this was a very unexpected little twist. So Michael is getting into the car and he is on the phone with Louisa. I don't know. This is so annoying. He's saying, you don't have it. You're not going to get in trouble. Did you take the pin? We'll be right there. And I was like, how did she manage that? I don't know. Do we find out how exactly she did it? But it turns out that Juicy took it. Or Juice. Juice? I don't remember. I love her intro. Louisa, Raphael's sister who accidentally inseminated Jane, kind of a train wreck. And then the narrator says, oh, who am I kidding? And they replace it with total train wreck. And she says, I went to get the pin. And then we flash into a scene. She has the pin hidden amongst a bunch of shoes and shoe boxes. And it's in there apparently with all kinds of other things. Juicy Jordan, that's her name. AKA Juice. Okay, so I was right in both cases. She is taking stuff out of the box and looking at it. And when Juice comes in, she's like, they want something to do with Rose, something like evidence. And Juice comes in and sees this box of stuff. There's what looks like lingerie, maybe a letter or some cards or something. Like later on, we see handcuffs. And Louisa says, they were cataloging so much, I didn't think they'd miss it. And Juice says, you saved things from your psychopath ex-girlfriend? And Louisa says, okay, first of all, she's not a psychopath. She's a sociopath. And Juicy says, oh my God, you are still hung up on her. And when Louisa tries to get her stuff back, Juicy says, no fucking way. And she goes to the balcony and she just chucks the whole box out over the balcony into the pool. And all of their random stuff is chilling in the pool. I really want a show of hands here. Initially, I was like, Juicy, what are you doing? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh no, she's right. Like, this is a psychopath. A sociopath, whatever. She killed your father, dude. And you not only like have her stuff that you're keeping, and it's not like in a storage unit somewhere. It's in your closet, easily accessible right there. You know where everything is. But not only that, you stole back evidence from the police to have. And that for me is really what takes it to the next level. Is like, keeping all of that stuff would, I think if I were in Juicy's shoes and Owen had a box of stuff from some ex, I would also be like, are you fucking kidding? But if I found out that he had taken something that was like in an evidence bag, I'm thinking divorce. Like, that's a whole other kettle of fish. So yeah, at first I was like, Juicy, oh my God. And then I kind of stepped back and went, valid. All right, that's fine. So we go down to the pool and the two boys literally just jump in and start swimming around. And, oh, that's right. There is lingerie because you see like the garter belts and stuff just like hanging around in the water. It's really fun to see the variety of things. At one point, there's a packet of those donuts, the powdered donuts that the two of them shared. And I can't tell if that's real or CGI, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty well done. But Jane, like the fucking brilliant chick she is like, I wonder if it got caught in the pool filter. And she goes over and finds it. can I just say how much I love that she yells out to both of them, get out of the pool, come on. And they utter not a word of frustration or protest that they just got completely soaked for no reason. It's like everybody is in agreement. This is such an emergency situation that they're just like, we're doing what we got to do. Who the fuck cares? I got wet. So what? Like, I just really love seeing the three of them as a united team. It's just really, really great. Rowan says, that's pretty extreme, but I don't think I would react like Juicy. I definitely want to talk about it though. Yeah, I wouldn't react like her, but the fact that Louisa was like, can you give that back? That was the part for me that I felt all of a sudden like, oh, you know what? Because that's her being like, stop taking my stuff, to the person she's currently dating. And that would really probably send me over the edge. I don't think I would toss it out the window, but I'd probably like shove the box back into your hands and be like, enjoy, and then leave. Because clearly I am not the priority for you. So why am I here? So we see everybody getting the texts at the fact that they found their stuff. I love Rogelio. Gloria Estefan wants to know if there's anything that she can do. We find out later that he tweeted the Amber Alert for the baby and then lets everybody know that the baby was found and everything is good. And that winds up being a big problem because so many people saw his message that it got picked up by the news and it's a whole thing. So then we go to the drop point. Michael is going into the church. He is like, I just want it noted, basically completely dry here, except for like his shoulders and hair. It's fine. I genuinely do not care, but I just thought it was funny. And it turns out that Nadine is the one holding the baby. And it's sort of a weird scene here because Nadine is almost feeling victorious here. There's something about the energy that and it's understandable because her whole thing is, you are judging me so hard for what I did. You are now standing here doing some off the books shit yourself. Now, do you fucking get it? And I understand there being a sense of validation there, but there's almost like, she's almost taking pleasure in it in a way that I was sort of going, girl, dial it down a bit. Like, you're holding an infant that's not even a day old. Like, this is not the time, you know? But yeah, she says, do you have it? And he holds up the pin. Do you even want to know what's on the chip inside? And he says no, which, good choice. But she tells him anyway. All of the faces Sinrostro has changed. Crime bosses, drug lords. It's a record of what they looked like before and what they look like now. Still want to trade? Yes. Huh. Rose was right. See, I wasn't so sure you'd do it. And we then see Michael coming out with the baby. We don't see the actual exchange. I'm assuming it went exactly as it was supposed to have gone. But there is a part of me that wonders if we cut away for a reason at that point. I also want to note that it's possible, I don't think likely, but possible, that they managed to like get a copy of whatever was on the chip before they handed it over, or when they first took it into evidence. I don't know. The thing is, it's in an evidence baggie, and it was registered as evidence because Sinrostro says that it's like in their system. I don't know how she knows that. I don't know what access she's got. But if it's in their system, it was logged and then taken. But I'm assuming taken like at the scene and not from the station. I'm really just, what I'm wondering is how Louisa got her hands on it. Because if they logged it and she got her hands on it somehow after, it's possible that they found the significance of this, but it's pretty unlikely. And I don't see them having found a way to make a copy of whatever's on it without destroying or damaging the pin in such a way that it would be clear, and kind of, wind up being a problem once he tries to do the exchange. So I'm going to just trust it was completely under the radar. Cops knew nothing about it. When it got taken, it didn't seem significant because it was just a brooch, so who cares? And Louisa had no idea either. That's really my question. Like, what does Louisa know? And then they had no time to do anything about what was on the brooch, because clearly nobody gives a shit about, like, taking down Sinrostro in the midst of, is the baby even still alive? Like, that's a whole other thing. And I love when Michael is coming out of the church and Jane sees him coming and she yells to Raphael to run. She's just like, go run. And he literally does. There's just something so nice about all of them on the same side here and being so urgent, like every single one of them as urgent as the other. And she comes and takes the baby and she's just whispering, like, you're okay, mommy's here, mommy's here. And I really like this scene. Raphael is like holding his hands and pressing his face into his hands. And it's such a great illustration of what it's like when you want to be like participating, but there's nothing for you to do right now. And you're just, this is like the perpetual pose I was in when all of the puppies were super sick or when Sam got infected. Like, just this complete, like, oh my God, like you're clenching just to do something with all of the tension in your body. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then he like looks over and he gives Michael this big hug and it's so heartfelt. And I just really, really loved this. It was just such a good moment. we jump over to Petra for a second and we just see her with a notebook like collapsing onto the couch and not looking awesome. And we find out later she got pretty drunk and like overslept, but we'll get to that. So yeah, this is just, I want to know like how Nadine got out of there. Like, I have so many questions about how all of this wound up working, but the baby has lost a little bit of weight and Jane is super concerned that because she wasn't able to feed him on time, there's something wrong. And the doctor tells her that he looks great, but also when she says it takes babies up to 2 weeks to get back up to their birth weight, which is why I'm not too concerned. And Jane says, well, you're not too concerned, but you're like some concerned. And she's freaking out. I mean, I just really, really understand at this point how every little thing is going to send you into the fucking stratosphere, because that's a horrible first night. I mean, nightmare, actual nightmare. Like, this is the kind of thing you have bad dreams about. Your child is missing kind of thing. You guys, I know I always compare my dogs to the kids, but it's literally the only metric of comparison I have. So forgive me, but y'all, I had a dream 3 days ago or 4 days ago that Pippin got hit by a car, and it was a really graphic, awful dream. And it was so detailed about, like, he was sitting in the shade because it was super hot out and somebody didn't realize and they started their car up, and it was like awful. And in the dream, I woke up and turned to Owen and said, babe, I just had the worst nightmare that Pippin got run over. And Owen said, babe, that wasn't a dream. Pippin's gone. And then I really woke up. When I tell you the panic that I felt when I woke up, freaked out. Like, it took me several minutes to establish that was part of the dream. Pippin was at the foot of the bed, curled up. It was fine. But I, like, really one of those dreams that has affected the way I handle the dogs. Like, I would sometimes take them out to pee without a leash because it's just quicker and easier for them to find the spot that they want to go than for me to follow them. And they're on a leash all the time now. I don't even want to play. Like, I'm not doing it. So anyway, I just truly understand how she gets like increasingly defensive throughout this episode because she is so worried and she is taking a lot of responsibility that I don't think she should for the situation, and is like winds up blaming it on a lack of maternal instinct, which we're just going to talk about that later because not right now. But yeah, the doctor tells her that's about 10%. So it's at the outer limits of normal, but you're nursing. So it's likely your milk just hasn't come in. And Raphael says, should we get him a bottle? And she says, no, I really want nursing to work. And it turns out that sometimes if there's a bottle, the baby will start to prefer the bottle to the breast, probably because it's maybe a little bit easier to nurse from a bottle. Like, it's going to be more consistent. But I love this moment when she says that her mom was like paying attention in lactation class. And that's specifically the class that Raphael like was too busy to go to. And when she says something about how Mateo can get confused between the bottle and the breast, and the concern is he would prefer the bottle, Raphael says, not if he's my son. And the two of them just turn and look at him, and I was just like, yeah, that's what you deserve. But this is like a real small illustration of how he doesn't really understand the role he is supposed to play in all of this. So this is something he comes to Michael with later on. So we then have this moment with Michael. He is getting called into the captain's office, and the captain says, one last thing, Nadine Hassan's tracker was disabled last night. Do you know anything about that? And we see Michael telling Sinrostro to tell Nadine to ditch her cell. And this guy says, can't help wondering if somebody tipped her off on our side. And Michael says, I'm the one who planted that tracker. You know how important catching Sinrostro is to me. And he just walks out. It's convincing to me, but he doesn't say, no, I didn't, which always bothers me. Like, if you are trying to deny the thing, you've got to actually say, no, I didn't. I can't help but wonder if his captain bought it. I don't feel like he did. I don't know. We'll see. So then we have Jane getting ready to go home from the hospital, and she's telling Raphael to go home, take a shower, sleep, but he's not enjoying the idea of leaving Mateo, which he comes and talks to her about a little bit later. Her mother at this point is walking in also saying like, and also Jane needs to sleep. But we see later, fully 2 days go by and she doesn't sleep, which is really bad. Like, it's, you're already up so much as a new mom, adding like no sleeping even in between feedings, because the baby's feeding really often because there's like not enough milk quite yet. That sounds like hell, pure hell. So here comes Scott, and he comes up to him and says, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And he says, well, Petra's helping with the loose ends. And Scott says, okay, so should I just go wake her or what? And he says, wake her, and barges into the room. This is really funny because he is standing over her, and his sperm sample is literally right there on the table, but he doesn't notice it, which I don't think you would notice it. Like, it looks like it could be almost anything. It's in a pretty uninteresting looking silver cylinder that I would probably, I just glanced at it, think was full of like hard candies or something, or maybe it was a candle even. So she starts to make this, we flash back to her making the list of the pros and cons of inseminating herself. Cons: pregnant, baby, motherhood, maternity clothes, seem like a psychopath. You're not wrong, girl. And as she's writing each of these, she's getting more and more pained expression on her face. And pros, there's a long pause and it just says Raphael. And I just can't help but be like, I'm not entirely sure he's in the pro column, girl. I feel like there's no surer way to drive him away forever. But, okay. It's just like, okay, sure. So we come back to the present. She's finally waking up and seeing the situation, and he's looking at the table and says, "What is this?" And he reaches down and she thinks he's going for the container, but instead he reaches for the Marbella paperwork. And he says, "It's in half an hour, and I don't want my sister to be the one to talk to them. Have you been drinking?" And she says, "It's been an emotional night." And then, "How's your son?" And he says he's great, because apparently they can't tell anybody about Sinrostro, which really sucks. That got to me a little bit, knowing they went through this awful thing, but pretty much no one can know about it. There's something so hateful about that. The ability to both put a person through that kind of trauma and make it so that there's no possibility of sharing and unburdening yourself. It's just like salt in the wound. It's really mean-spirited. So anyway, she gets the paperwork and uses it to kind of cover up the container as she lifts it off the table so that he won't see it. And in order to hide it, she tucks it into what looks like a kind of Tiffany bag, like a little gift bag that's sitting there, which later becomes a whole thing. So we have the scene with Jane, and she's like struggling with trying to sleep. Her mother says, "What if I hold him and then you can sleep?" And then her mom comes in and says, "All right, now give him to me. You need to sleep too, Shamara." And she says the exact same thing. "I'm not tired, Ma." This little baby, you guys, he is so cute. Oh my God, that head of hair, truly great stuff. It's so funny because they cut from what's clearly a very real baby that has just been handed off to Alba sitting in a rocking chair carrying what is very clearly a doll baby. And because its arm is just like dangling limply. And I was just like, man, I probably wouldn't have noticed that if you hadn't put those back to back, but it does not matter. It's just funny. So Jane closes her eyes here and she sleeps, I think he says, for 8.5 minutes. And then she sits up because there is this weird yelling outside. And they're like, what is going on? And Rogelio, who was out in the living room, says, "I think I know that sound." I love the haunted look in his eye when he says it, like he's been through a war. And she opens her front door and looks outside, and there are all these people holding Jane the Virgin, the Holy Virgin, miracle birth, second coming signs. I really, really hate her little stepsister, half-sister, whatever's for this. Like, ew. I mean, this sucks so hard. So This is when we find out that the retreating of the Amber Alert was like a major factor. I love when they all turn to look at him and he staggers back like the force of them looking at him has just shoved him. Hashtag family, hashtag love, hashtag flub. And when you Google her name, this comes up and we see the Jane the Virgin site. Could this be a modern day miracle? And this is such a weird thing because the way Jane decides to handle this eventually is to go to the sisters and be like, I've had sex a bunch of times. And unless you want to be caught up in a debate about my virginity, I think you should just drop this. Which I don't exactly know why Jane doesn't just explain to the press about the medical mistake. I feel like that would be a much quicker way to deal with the situation, is to just be like, it's not a miracle. It was an error, which resulted in a lawsuit. A very like prosaic thing. That's what I thought she was intending. Instead, just being like, I've had sex, and saying that privately to one person who has a lot to gain by keeping up this whole charade. It seemed like a really bad way to handle it, like extremely inefficient and probably ineffective as well. The way that the show is handling it leads me to believe I'm supposed to think this worked. But I just want to state for the record, I don't feel like this was the way to go. I think it's a funny choice just to have her be like, I'm not a virgin when she is. Because lying about being a virgin is much more common than lying about not being a virgin. But I don't really feel like it's the course that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this whole thing, it just winds up being a thorn in her side, where eventually she like wants to go back to the hospital and they don't know, or no, she has to go to a lactation class, and they're like, they're gonna all follow you. How do we do this? And Rogelio says, I have a lot of experience dodging the paparazzi. And we just cut to them in the class. We don't actually get to see what his little tricks are, which I was a little bummed by. I kind of wanted to see the tricks. But, and I love this, the news program, there's this woman who's saying, we tried to get pregnant for 7 years. And then I hugged Jane. We're due in 3 months. And Jane is screaming, have you ever heard of a coincidence? But Alba says, that is strange. She has to be like, Abuela. Reporter, and it gets stranger. Apparently, Jane went into labor on the 125 bus line. Let's meet the person who assisted her, the angel Gabriel. And they cut to the woman who helped her. It's Gabrielle. Can you tell us anything about this miraculous ride? I don't know if it was miraculous. And Jane is so like, oh, finally, a person with some fucking sense. But some might disagree. And we get to see this woman named Crystal. Have we met Crystal? I don't remember her. I feel like I'm supposed to know who she is, and I am just not remembering. And Crystal says, I actually saw the baby. I was coming out of my car. She says coming really, like she puts a real emphasis on it. Translation, she was having slutty car sex so her mom wouldn't know she was back with dumbass Donnie. And Jane was holding the baby, and I swear, he had this glow. So she's like trying to imply that the baby is like an angel, blessed. I don't know. Oh, Claire says slutty Crystal is Shamara's frenemy. I don't remember that. Rowan says, I think so has mentioned slutty Crystal before. Her, like the slutty Crystal, that sounded familiar, but her face is not familiar at all. And I couldn't remember what we had heard about Slutty Crystal. I remember Donnie is the guy that Jamara says she's back with in like the first episode. Because she's hiding that she's going to see Rogelio. So she's like acting like, oh, this is what I'm ashamed of, is that I'm back with him. But really there's a whole other thing going on. But I just don't remember Slutty Crystal and how she like factored into anything. Claire says, I don't think we've seen her before. She was just mentioned. Okay. Interesting that they bothered to cast her. I'm wondering if she's going to be part of this season. So they go to the lactation class, and it's a whole thing with like her realizing that there are going to be like difficulties with nursing that she hadn't foreseen. And it's sort of weird. The woman says, show me your breasts. We aren't shy here. But when Jane shows her, she says, oh, okay, yeah. And gets this real expression on her face. And I'm like, lady, you really need to work on that poker face, because what are you doing? What is it? And she says, we'll fix it. Pick up the baby. When he opens his mouth, I'm going to stuff your breast into his mouth like a hamburger. And that's what they do. Now, I'm going to be honest here. I was a little disappointed with how this works out, because Jane's milk comes in to the point where she's leaking later on. But having the number of like, what's the word I want? The whole theme of the first season was how Jane's life didn't turn out the way she intended, despite all of her planning and all of her best foot forward good behavior. There are certain things that are out of her control. And I was hoping a little bit that maybe her milk wouldn't come in and she would have to cope with, what does it mean when my ideal image of what it means to be a mother, which is breastfeeding my child, doesn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. Because I think that this is just something that I feel like personally about a little bit, which is weird because I don't have kids, but because I have friends that have been affected by this, it's like feels personal to me. The whole breast is best is one of those like really damaging campaigns where so many women have been made to feel shame over the fact that they cannot successfully breastfeed. And there are so many reasons why it doesn't happen. Sometimes the baby just never learns to latch properly. Sometimes your milk doesn't come in, or there's just not enough of it and you have to supplement. And sometimes there are just like, physiological problems, and the baby can sometimes like cause damage. Like it can be very painful sometimes to nurse. And there's also just things like postpartum depression, which causes the mother to like lose a feeling of connection with her child and not want to breastfeed and resent the sort of like demand on her body. There are just like, there's so many reasons why breastfeeding isn't the only option that's acceptable or healthy for the child. But that breast is best really took over everybody's lives for a while and turned into this weird metric by which so many people learn to shame moms and talk about how, like, if you were doing formula, that it was because you were lazy and didn't want to put in the work to figure out how to breastfeed. If the breastfeeding wasn't successful, that it was somehow your fault. There's just like a lot of stigma around it. Similar to the way we have turned this, whether you've had a vaginal birth or a C-section, into some sort of badge of honor, where there are women out there who claim that if you haven't given birth vaginally, then you didn't give birth at all. Don't call it giving birth. You had that baby ripped out of your stomach because you just didn't want to go through the pain of labor. That wasn't giving birth. That was you taking a shortcut. And like, this is a very common assertion that you see a lot. It's wild. Like, women just, we cannot win. It's just, truly just, we can't. But I just kind of wouldn't have minded if it just didn't go the way Jane had predicted. And she was forced to sort of like face, there's some stuff that's not up to you. You can do your best, mean well, do all the things, and it just doesn't matter. At the same time, though, she just got put through it so bad. And the speech that she gives to Shalmara about how her maternal instincts did not kick in, and she knows that this doesn't make sense, but she just wants to be able to do this for him. Even though it doesn't make sense, I really found myself moved by it enough that I was kind of like, okay, show, I get it. You're kind of trying to throw her a bone here because it's just been such a bad scene for her. And I can't deny watching her like not be able to nurse right after the trauma of the baby being taken would have been pretty rough, you know? So I'm not mad at the direction that they went. It's just that I felt like there was a bit of an opportunity to follow the trend of the sort of the storytelling device that they've been using, which is you make plans and God laughs, and also help to destigmatize bottle feeding. And they didn't do it, you know, and that's fine. I just kind of wanted a little bit of something there. Rowan says, oh, don't worry. Plenty of other things will not go according to Jane's plans. True. Yeah, I assume like, because that is a theme, there's a million places that they can choose to go that route. It's just because this is such a specific stigma that I wanted it addressed, I guess. And, you know, to be fair, I don't remember what year this was recorded, but this probably was in the midst of the Breast is Best campaign being like at its height. So I wouldn't be surprised if the writing was actually influenced by it and didn't understand what a stigma it was yet, because that's what always happens when there's like big social media campaigns about a specific thing. You have that like swell of support under it, and then you have the backlash. And sometimes the backlash is silly and it's just people being contrarian because it's the inevitable course that it all takes. But sometimes the backlash is 100% justified and earned. And that was one where it was definitely earned. And similar to the plastic straws thing, where everybody was like, oh yeah, reusable straws all the way. How dare you use straws? And eventually there were people like me who were like, hey, I have a facial spasm and I need a straw to drink out of things. Like my lips don't work. Or if you have a disability. And I was just like, it's really annoying to be told we don't use straws anymore because the straws are not the fucking problem. Can we stop? So anyway, this is when we have the scene with Michael and Raphael. And I do like this moment again where he says, thank you for the police escort. Oh, I don't think I caught this, that's what he did to escape the paparazzi. Oh my God, that's amazing. And Michael says, no problem. I think that's what Rogelio thinks I do all day, is just drive around celebrities. They're bonding. And Raphael laughs and says, can I ask you something? I am having trouble figuring out where I fit. How did you deal with how close they all are? And it's acknowledged that he could choose not to give any advice at all and let Raphael figure it out himself. He could give him bad advice on purpose to drive him and Jane apart, or he could do the right thing. And he does the right thing. He tells Raphael to read a book and wait for a moment when nobody understands the situation or has an answer, and then jump in with the info to save the day at that point. And it works. It's when he comes in and suggests maybe the baby is cluster feeding. All of a sudden, everybody is like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, it's in this book. And it's all about how her milk is coming in intermittently. That's what it means, is the baby is feeding a little bit, but it's not enough to like fill him up. So he has to feed again very quickly after. And you guys, the moment is so great because Jane is so relieved. Raphael is beaming. Like, just, he is so cute when he's happy, you know? The grin, it's like it's too big for his face. And it just worked so well. And then the camera turns to like Michael and Rogelio, who are sort of on the outskirts and looking on at this moment of triumph that they don't really seem to be a part of. And it's just like, we're all kind of figuring it out. Rowan, can they not just have straws available upon request and not as a default? You would think. But when we were at the height of the no straws thing, places just straight up were just like, we don't do those. It was very annoying. I also went out with some people who were very anti-straw. And when the server asked for straw, like, do you guys want straws? They started to be like, no, we don't use, and I was the one who had to be like, yes, please. And they gave me such a look. And it was very irritating. Anyway, enough about the straws. I'm sorry, everybody. But I just really, really liked this moment. And I appreciated that even though Michael knew that it was going to not exactly put him at an advantage, it was the right thing to do. And Raphael winds up crediting Michael in front of Jane and saying, like, thank you for that advice. And I really appreciate how much Jane is like, you know what, dude? And she offers for Raphael to stay over for several days in a row and is super like on board with the fact that he wants to be near Mateo all the time. But later, when she's with Michael, she says, Raphael is staying over. And Michael starts to be like, yeah, I get it. I'm going to back off. And she interrupts and says, but just as the father of the child. And she then goes, I'm sorry, that was weird. I don't know why I said that. But we know why she said it. And Michael knows why she said it. And it's very clearly what's happening. It's great. It's such a good moment of like, everybody's just trying to be their best. And it's still creating drama, it's like, it's working. Oh my God. I forgot about the fact that when Jane goes out and she gets that flash, it's Slutty Crystal's compact. That's so stupid. Oh my God. So anyway, that's where things stand with them. Really quick, I have to jump to Petra. Petra drunk dials her mom in jail, which is hilarious and just whines about everything. But we also have the conversation with Raphael and Luisa. That's right. Because basically he has kind of like lost his temper with her and he feels like has given her a bunch of chances to not be like an entire screw up, and she just keeps fucking up. So the meeting that she and Petra had, she winds up bursting into tears because somebody orders juice and it reminds her of her girlfriend. So when he comes to talk to Luisa, he's just like, I literally didn't even want you there. You had to ruin it. You knew how much this meant to me and you fucking ruined it. And this leads later to a conversation with Petra where what Luisa is attempting is to make it up to Raphael that she wrecked this deal. And Petra confesses finally, I heard you and Raphael talking and I heard him say that he was just manipulating me. So in a wonderful save. I really did like this. It's like a little bit of a stretch, but it's not enough of a stretch for me to have any problem with it. She tells she tells Petra, if you walked away, you didn't hear the rest of the conversation. Because when I said all things being equal, what would you want the situation to be? There's like a moment, you missed Raph saying he had no choice. Jane insisted. When I asked if all things were even, I'm going to directly quote, who he wished he was with, she says, well, he just yelled at me that none of this would have happened and that it was all my fault. That if I hadn't screwed up in the first place, we wouldn't be in this situation, which is true. That should have been your baby. And Petra, who is really probably the most wreck we've seen her, even in the times where she was broke and having to stay in one of those small rooms with her mom, she still looked put together. You know, she was more casual, but she was still polished. And here in this scene, she's got eye makeup around her eyes. Her lips are just like chapped, almost like not chapped, but like her lip liner is like running all around. And she's clearly drinking again. Like she's just not in a good place. But we have a flashback here of her and Raphael, and they had gotten one of those cupcakes that's like a gender reveal. So it would be pink or blue on the inside when you bite into it, but her and Raphael bite into it and it looks like it's purple. Neither of them can tell what it is. So they have to call the baker and ask, and they find out it's a boy. And it's a really well done scene of like true sweetness between the two of them, not counting the cake, and intimacy. And it feels so like understandable how she's clinging to what used to be. And when we come back to the present, Louisa says, there is still a chance for you and Raph, I swear. And it seems like Petra fully believes this. Like, she goes for it. After some quick Google searches and some pointers from Fertility Goddess 1345, she had decided she was going to go for it. And listeners, I made a joke about a turkey baster in the last episode, and it turns out that is literally exactly what she is going to do. And I cannot imagine how she is intending to play this. Like, girl, what you doing? What are you doing, though? What are you doing? So, yeah, apparently the whole thing for her is like, this should have been my baby. I'm going to, like, set the scales right. And, you know, obviously, the small percentile of chance that she would actually get pregnant from a professional inseminating her, I have to imagine it's even lower if you try and do it yourself. But I am assuming this is going to work. If the show jukes left and she doesn't actually get pregnant, I'm going to be actually kind of impressed, because her getting pregnant is like the obvious thing. I mean, there's no way the amount of drama that arises from that is enough for another 4 seasons. But if they don't do that, I feel like that's way harder and much more unexpected. So I'd kind of be impressed. At the same time, though, I do kind of just want the obvious thing, you know? Like, come on. So anyway, the episode ends. Shamara winds up coming clean and telling the two of them, Alba and Jane, about the fact that her and Rogelio got married and that they are going to get it annulled. And then we have a wonderful moment of Petra coming into her she's coming into her office. And Scott is there. Still, he is just so attractive. Good God. And she says, Scott, what are you doing here? And he says, I just wanted to discuss the fact that you stole Mr. Solano's sperm. And she's just standing there like, oh, shit. I kind of skipped over the whole part where the sperm, it was like in a gift bag. But I did notice that when she finds it, it's not in the bag anymore. It's just out. And I was sort of wondering what that was about. So it makes sense. Maybe that was how he found it, or else they called again and he like followed up. I don't know, but I'm assuming that was how he found out. So she used the sperm already. It's too late, but he knows about it. So it's a whole thing. And yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming he like blackmails her with this information, but I'm kind of hoping, I mean, why go to her and tell her he knows if he's not going to blackmail her? That's gotta be what he's doing. Guys, when she comes in the bedroom and Raphael is taking his shirt off to do skin to skin contact with the baby, the look on her face, I just love, like, just like, oh, what are you doing? Like, look, I am not into Raphael, but I cannot like look at him. Christ's sake, you know, Jesus. It's like really distracting, actually. And when he's holding the little baby, oh my God. These are the moments where I'm like, oh, there are my ovaries. There they are. Sometimes I feel like they don't work. And then there's a very strong man holding an infant, and all of a sudden I'm like a cave woman, and I'm like, oh no, I get it. Yeah, no, this is the primal drive. And I love when she's trying to sleep and she says, this is weird. And he says, well, it was never not going to be weird, which is a really good answer, actually. And she says, it's actually just kind of regular weird, which works, which is good. It's just a sweet moment. And it starts to say to be continued, but then one more thing. And we have Sinrostro seeing the news about how the miracle baby has returned. She's in some alpine. It's like a very bad green screen alpine scene, but whatever. And she is talking to her bald henchman after seeing this. And she says, let's go after her now. And that is the end of the episode. I don't know if this is like the same person. She's in such different settings, and I'm certain that's just meant to indicate she's on the run. But there's part of me that's like, is this a fake out? Like, I don't know. So anyway, I'm way over time. I have got to go. But this was a really, really fun start to the new season. I'm psyched. I can't wait to see the next ones. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you, Natalia, for commissioning this one. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.